Imagine a man who survived one of the most violent eras in American frontier history, was wanted by the law, ran brothels, made a fortune during a gold rush, helped shape Hollywood's image of the Old West, and then died peacefully in bed at 80 years old. That man was real. You know the name Wyatt Earp, but you probably don't know the man behind the legend. Wyatt Barry Stapp Earp was born on March 19, 1848, and named after the Army captain under whom his father had served. He grew up in a family that rarely stayed in one place for long, frontier town to frontier town. No permanent roots, just the road. Before becoming famous, Wyatt hauled freight, worked around stagecoaches, gambled, and later claimed that he had hunted buffalo. He tried almost everything and seemed to settle at nothing. Then in 1870, tragedy struck. His young pregnant wife died suddenly. Wyatt collapsed. He spiraled. While serving as a constable in Missouri, he was accused of embezzling public funds. In 1871, he was arrested for horse theft, escaped custody, and fled. He was later arrested several times in Peoria, Illinois, for offenses connected to brothels. Some even called him the Peoria Bummer. This was not the clean beginning Hollywood would later give him, but something in Wyatt Earp refused to stay down. He rebuilt himself and eventually became one of the most famous lawmen of the American frontier. In the 1870s, he arrived in Kansas cattle towns, where gambling, drinking, and violence were part of everyday life. Dodge City was sometimes described as one of the wickedest towns in the West. Wyatt served there as an assistant marshal and developed a reputation for handling armed men with remarkable nerve. He was not remembered as a man who fired first at every opportunity. He often walked directly toward armed cowboys, disarmed them, and marched them to jail. Nerve, presence, cold efficiency. One famous story, possibly embellished, claimed that Wyatt once faced down the dangerous gunman Ben Thompson while others stood frozen. Whether every detail was true or not, stories like this spread quickly along the cattle trails. And so did Wyatt Earp's reputation. By 1881, Wyatt had reached Tombstone, Arizona. It was a silver mining boomtown overflowing with money, gambling, political rivalry, and violence. On October 26 of that year, something happened that would echo through American history for more than a century: the gunfight at the OK Corral. But here is what the movies often leave out. The shooting did not actually happen inside the corral. It took place in a narrow vacant lot near Fremont Street. The opposing men stood only a few feet apart. Then came smoke, confusion, shouting, and the crack of pistols at nearly point-blank range. The entire fight lasted roughly 30 seconds. Wyatt's brother, Virgil, the town marshal, was attempting to enforce a local weapons ordinance against members of a loosely organized group known as the Cocos County Cowboys. When the shooting stopped, 3 cowboys were dead. Virgil Earp, Morgan Earp, and Doc Holliday were wounded. Wyatt Earp walked away without a scratch, but the violence was far from over. Months later, Virgil was ambushed and permanently injured. Then Morgan Earp was shot and killed while playing billiards. Wyatt's response was not a courtroom. He formed a federal posse with Doc Holliday and several other men. Together, they rode across the Arizona territory on what became known as the Earp Vendetta Ride. They pursued the men Wyatt believed were responsible for the attacks on his brothers and killed several suspected participants along the way. Depending on whom you asked, it was frontier justice or cold-blooded vengeance. Newspapers could not decide whether Wyatt Earp was a hero or a murderer. Neither could the law. After the Vendetta Ride, Wyatt was wanted by authorities in parts of Arizona. He fled Tombstone and never again returned to the town that made him famous. What followed was a life that sounds almost invented. Wyatt continued moving through the American West. He gambled, invested in mining claims, ran saloons, refereed boxing matches, and repeatedly searched for the next great opportunity. During the Klondike Gold Rush, Wyatt and his wife, Josephine, traveled north to Nome, Alaska. There he operated a saloon called the Dexter. He reportedly left Alaska with as much as $80,000, a fortune at the time. But even then, Wyatt Earp never completely escaped controversy. In 1896, he had refereed a heavily disputed championship boxing match in San Francisco. His decision caused outrage, and many spectators believed the fight had been fixed. Once again, Wyatt found himself somewhere between respected authority and suspected criminal. Back in California around 1910, he became involved in another confrontation. During a bitter mining claim dispute in the California desert, Wyatt reportedly worked with armed guards protecting surveyors. At one point, he was said to have confronted a federal receiver while carrying a Winchester rifle. Even as the 20th century arrived, Wyatt Earp never really stopped chasing the frontier. Then during his final years in Los Angeles, something unexpected happened. Hollywood came calling. Wyatt became acquainted with silent film stars such as Tom Mix and William S. Hart. He spent time around early movie sets and spoke with actors and filmmakers about life in the Old West. He helped shape the legend that would eventually replace the complicated reality. And according to historians, Wyatt was not above improving his own story when the truth seemed less exciting. In 1931, a biography titled Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal transformed him into a nearly flawless Western hero. It helped cement the myth of Wyatt Earp for generations. But by the time the book was published, Wyatt was already gone. He died peacefully in Los Angeles on January 13, 1929. He was 80 years old. He was the last surviving participant in the gunfight at the OK Corral. Here is what makes Wyatt Earp genuinely remarkable. Not the Hollywood version, the real one. He was wanted by the law and hired by the law. He was accused of crimes and celebrated as a symbol of justice. He worked in brothels, gambling halls, police departments, mining camps, saloons, and movie studios. He lived through one of the most violent chapters in American frontier history and outlasted nearly everyone around him. He did not die in a dusty street with a revolver in his hand. He died peacefully in Los Angeles, in bed, at 80 years old, with Hollywood movie stars among his friends. That is the real story of Wyatt Earp, and it is far stranger than the legend Hollywood built around him.